It was the most magnificent and obscene piece of jewelry ever created. Commissioned by King Louis XV for his mistress, Madame du Barry. It was the masterwork of the Parisian jewelers Baume and Bassange. They had spent years collecting the perfect stones, 647 flawless diamonds, cascading in ropes, pendants, and tassels, weighing a staggering 2,800 carats. It was a river of light, a treasure of unimaginable value. But the king died before it was finished. Leaving the jewelers with an unsellable masterpiece, they offered it to the new queen, Marie Antoinette, but she refused. Its price was astronomical, nearly 2,000,000 livres, enough to fund a warship. The necklace became a white elephant, a cursed and glittering weight around the necks of its creators, waiting for a story to attach itself to. The central players in that story were a study in contrasts. First, there was the queen herself, Marie Antoinette, young, beautiful, and a lover of fashion and luxury. She was already deeply unpopular with the French public. They saw her as a frivolous foreigner, nicknaming her Madame Deficit for her perceived extravagance. Crucially, she had personally and repeatedly rejected the diamond necklace, finding it vulgar and in poor taste. She wanted nothing to do with it. Next, there was Cardinal de Rohan, a man from one of France's most ancient and powerful noble families. He was wealthy and influential, but he was also deeply ambitious and desperate for more. He had fallen out of favor with the queen and was obsessed with winning his way back into her inner circle, a vulnerability that made him blind to all reason. He was the perfect mark. And finally, there was the mastermind, Jeanne de Valois-Saint-Rémy. A descendant of a former royal line, Jeanne had a noble name, but no money and no morals. She was a brilliant, charismatic, and utterly ruthless social climber, a con artist who had successfully manipulated her way into the cardinal's trust, preying on his vanity and his desperate ambition. You have a priceless, unsellable necklace, a queen who despises it, a cardinal who would do anything to gain her favor, and a cunning grifter who sees them both as keys to a fortune. How could these pieces possibly be assembled into one of the greatest scams in history? A scandal that would not just steal a jewel, but tarnish a queen and help light the fuse of revolution? The answer lies in a breathtakingly audacious web of forgery, impersonation, and a deep understanding of the dark, desperate desires of the human heart. The con began not with a jewel, but with a word. Jeanne de Valois, a master manipulator, understood her target perfectly. She knew Cardinal de Rohan was consumed by his desire to regain the queen's favor. So, she dangled the one thing he couldn't resist: hope. She told him that she had become a secret confidant of Marie Antoinette and had spoken to the queen on his behalf. She suggested the cardinal write a letter of justification and apology, which she, his loyal friend, would personally and discreetly deliver. The desperate cardinal seized the opportunity. What followed was one of the most audacious acts of fraud in the 18th century. Rohan would write passionate, pleading letters to the queen, and Jeanne would take them. Then, with the help of a skilled forger, she would craft replies. The letters she returned to the cardinal were masterpieces of psychological manipulation. They started coolly, then gradually warmed, hinting at forgiveness, then affection, and eventually a secret intimacy. For months, the cardinal carried on this passionate, Secret correspondence with a woman who had no idea he was even writing to her. He fell completely in love with a phantom, a queen that existed only in forged letters and his own desperate imagination. Emboldened by this epistolary romance, the cardinal now craved a real meeting, a sign of the queen's favor that he could see with his own eyes. A lesser con artist would have been trapped, her bluff called. But for Jeanne de Valois, this was the ultimate opportunity to seal the deal. She arranged the most daring piece of theater imaginable. She scoured Paris for an impersonator, finally finding a young prostitute named Nicole Leguet, whose build and profile bore a passing resemblance to the Queen. Then, on a dark night in August of 1784, the stage was set. Jeanne led the nervous cardinal to a secluded grove in the gardens of the Palace of Versailles. In the deep shadows, the impersonator, dressed in a simple white gown the Queen was known to favor, appeared for a fleeting moment. She handed the cardinal a single rose, whispered a line to the effect of, "You may hope that the past is forgotten," and then, feigning the approach of others, quickly slipped back into the darkness. The entire encounter lasted less than a minute, but for Cardinal de Rohan, it was a moment of pure triumph. He was utterly and completely duped. The Queen had met with him. She had forgiven him. He was back in her favor. With the cardinal now firmly in her grasp, Jeanne prepared the final stage of her trap. A few weeks later, she came to him with a story of a secret, royal dilemma. The Queen, she explained, desperately desired that magnificent diamond necklace, the one the jewelers Baume and Bassange had been trying to sell for years. But she could not possibly buy it herself. With France's finances in a precarious state and her reputation as Madame Deficit, such an extravagant public purchase was unthinkable. The Queen, Jeanne claimed, needed a discreet and powerful friend to act as a secret intermediary, someone who could use their own name and credit to acquire the necklace on her behalf. She would, of course, repay him in full, and his reward for this immense service and display of loyalty would be everything he ever wanted, the Queen's eternal gratitude, and the powerful political position of Chief Minister of France. The bait was irresistible. Jeanne had offered the cardinal the key to his every ambition, wrapped in a secret, romantic intrigue with the Queen herself. The trap was set. All he had to do was walk into it. Cardinal de Rohan, blinded by ambition and convinced he was performing a secret, heroic service for his Queen, walked directly into the trap. On February 1st, 1785, he met with the jewelers, Baume and Bassange. He presented them with the terms of the sale, all detailed in letters, bearing the forged signature of Marie Antoinette. The price was set at a staggering 1.6 million livres, to be paid in for installments over 2 years, to the jewelers, who had been on the brink of financial ruin for years because of their unsellable masterpiece. This was a moment of deliverance. They saw before them a prince of the church, a member of one of France's great families, acting as an agent for the Queen herself. They had no reason to doubt the transaction. With trembling hands, they placed the magnificent diamond necklace into a casket and handed it over to the cardinal. The most expensive piece of jewelry in the world had just been acquired through a complete and utter fraud. The cardinal, his heart soaring with pride, took the casket directly to Jeanne de Valois' apartment. There, A man he believed to be a valet from the palace was waiting. Rohan, feeling he was on the cusp of achieving all his dreams, handed over the necklace, believing it was now on its way to the Queen's private chambers at Versailles. It was the last time he, or any member of the French court, would ever see it intact. The moment the cardinal was gone, Jeanne's husband, the Comte de la Motte, took the necklace and fled to London. There, in secret, the couple committed their final act of vandalism. They took a knife to the great necklace, a masterpiece of craftsmanship, and crudely began to pry the hundreds of diamonds from their settings. The glorious river of light was broken apart, its magnificent stones sold off one by one on the black market of London to pay off their debts and fund their lavish lifestyle. The necklace was gone forever. Back in Paris, the jewelers waited. The date of the first payment came and went, but no money arrived from the palace. Growing nervous, they sent a polite invoice to the Queen. Marie Antoinette, having no idea what it was for, assumed it was another piece of unsolicited marketing from the persistent jewelers and, according to her lady-in-waiting, burned the note. Finally, in July, his desperation boiling over, the jeweler Boehmer committed a major breach of protocol. He gained access to the Queen at Versailles and directly demanded his money. Marie Antoinette was utterly bewildered. She insisted, truthfully, that she had never ordered nor received the necklace. The equally confused jeweler then produced the paperwork, the terms of the sale, all authorized by the Queen's signature. As the Queen looked at the documents, the scale of the deception became horrifyingly clear. It was a forgery, and the contract had been negotiated and signed by her supposed secret agent, the Cardinal de Rohan. In that instant, the private con exploded into a public scandal. The king was informed, and his fury was absolute. The heist was over. The trial was about to begin. When King Louis XVI learned of the full scope of the deception, his fury was absolute. He was enraged not just by the theft, but by the cardinal's stunning arrogance and stupidity. How could a prince of the church believe that his wife, the Queen of France, would engage in such a sordid, clandestine affair to acquire a piece of jewelry? The king, seeking to swiftly and publicly vindicate his wife's honor, made a catastrophic political miscalculation. Instead of dealing with the matter quietly, he chose to make a public example of the cardinal. On August 15, 1785, on the Feast of the Assumption, King Louis ordered the arrest of Cardinal de Rohan. The timing and location were chosen for maximum impact. Rohan, dressed in his full, magnificent clerical robes, and about to celebrate Mass before the entire royal court in the chapel of Versailles, was arrested in the Hall of Mirrors and escorted to the Bastille. The public arrest of one of the highest-ranking noblemen and churchmen in France turned the affair into an explosive, front-page scandal. Within days, Jeanne de Valois and the other conspirators were also rounded up. The trial became the obsession of all of Paris and all of Europe. It was not just a criminal proceeding. It was a trial of the monarchy itself in the court of public opinion. The courtroom was a theater, and the defendants gave the performances of their lives. Cardinal de Rohan's defense was simple. He portrayed himself as a well-intentioned but hopelessly naive fool. He argued that his only crime was being so blinded by his devotion to the Queen that he fell victim to a masterful and cunning deception. But the star of the show was Jeanne de Valois. From her prison cell, she proved to be a brilliant and shameless manipulator of public opinion. She smuggled out scandalous, fabricated memoirs, which were eagerly published and devoured by a gossip-hungry public. In her story, she was not the mastermind. She was an innocent pawn, caught between the ambitions of a corrupt cardinal and the decadent, manipulative schemes of a lesbian queen. She played on every negative stereotype the public already held about Marie Antoinette: that she was deceitful, sexually deviant, and a foreigner who was ruining France. Jeanne was not just defending herself, she was putting the Queen on trial. In May of 1786, the Parliament of Paris delivered its verdict. In a stunning rebuke of the monarchy, the court acquitted Cardinal de Rohan. The public erupted in celebration, hailing the cardinal as a hero, a man who had been victimized by royal tyranny. The implication of the verdict was a disaster for the Queen. By acquitting Rohan, the court essentially ruled that his story was plausible, that it was reasonable to believe that the Queen of France would engage in secret affairs and fraudulent schemes. The monarchy's attempt to vindicate the Queen's honor had failed spectacularly. Jeanne de Valois was found guilty. She was publicly flogged, branded with a V for volus, or thief, and sentenced to life in prison. But she had already won the war of public opinion. Her lies had proven more powerful than the Queen's truth. The trial that was meant to clear Marie Antoinette's name had instead covered it in a permanent layer of filth, confirming in the minds of the people that their Queen was everything her worst enemies said she was. In the end, Jeanne de Valois was imprisoned. Though she would later escape, Cardinal de Rohan was acquitted, but his reputation was left in tatters and he was exiled from the royal court. But the person who suffered the most from the affair of the diamond necklace was the one person who was completely innocent of any wrongdoing: Queen Marie Antoinette. The trial that was meant to be her public vindication became her public crucifixion. In the court of law, she was a victim, but in the far more powerful court of public opinion, she was the villain. The lies that Jeanne de Valois had spun during the trial was simply more exciting and more believable to a public that was already primed to despise their queen. The scandal confirmed their every prejudice against her. She was the frivolous Austrian Madame Deficit, a woman capable of bankrupting the nation for a piece of jewelry while the people starved. Her innocence was a historical fact, but it was a fact that no one was interested in hearing. Just 3 years after the verdict, the French Revolution would begin. While the revolution had deep and complex causes, the affair of the diamond necklace was a powerful accelerant. It was a gift to the revolutionary propagandists. The story was repeated endlessly in angry pamphlets and vulgar cartoons, becoming a symbol of the monarchy's corruption and moral decay. The affair stripped the crown of its mystique. It showed the royal family not as semi-divine rulers, but as flawed, foolish, and potentially depraved people. The scandal made it easier for the public to hate their queen, and that hatred would eventually curl into a revolutionary fury that would consume the entire monarchy. The affair had destroyed Marie Antoinette's reputation, and in doing so, It helped to destroy the very institution she represented. The final irony of the story is as perfect as it is tragic. A diamond necklace of unimaginable value, a jewel that Marie Antoinette never wanted, never wore, and never even touched, would end up costing her everything. It cost her the love of her people. It cost her her honor, and it helped to cost her the crown and ultimately her life. The con artists had only set out to steal a collection of precious stones, but the scandal they unleashed was a far more successful heist. It stole the Queen's reputation and, in doing so, helped to bring down one of the most powerful monarchies in the world. It was a perfect and fatal character assassination. So, was Marie Antoinette an innocent victim of a brilliant scam? Or did her reputation for extravagance make a disaster like this inevitable? And can a public figure ever truly recover from a lie the world wants to believe? Share your verdict in the comments below. And to investigate more of history's most fascinating crimes and conspiracies, make sure you subscribe to the Black Chronicle.